You ready to
That's
jump
cool.
in?
Yeah, man. I'm
All
ready.
right.
I'm always ready.
Let's go. What made you fall in love with photography?
I didn't. I don't.
All right, I'll move on. What's your favorite place in the world?
Oh, it's Zion National Park.
Who was the first band you saw live?
Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Right. Where was that?
Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up.
Black and white or sepia?
Yeah, it's all about context, So black and white.
Candid or staged?
Oh, see, this is a problem. It's like staged but refined, staged but crafted. It's a weird one.
If you could choose another career, what would it be?
I've always wanted to be a voice actor. I've always wanted to be the voice of a cartoon character.
Oh, that's cool. Himalayan trek or Thai beach holiday?
Oh, Himalayan trek. Yeah.
Nice.
Or preferably Himalayan motorcycle ride, but I've had a Thai beach holiday. It's good. I recommend, but I haven't done the other.
Welcome to the show. I thought I'd lead with a little bit of a story that you're one of the reasons why I've been doing this for a few years. I actually went along to a conference many years ago. I think it was like We Are Podcast's first conference. And I rock into this room and there was these sessions. And the first session was how to take a selfie.
Yes.
And here I was, former lawyer, thought a lot about myself and going into a session about taking a selfie. And I hadn't done anything really on social media. And I walked out of that session and I thought, oh, these are just my people. Mm-hmm. Like, firstly, you were awesome presenting it. But I love the process we actually went through. But actually physically doing it and actually physically having something that I took away. It was a real turning point, man. So I just thought I would share that with you. But start the show, tell us about yourself. What do you do and why we here, I guess.
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that workshop because my background, before I became a photographer, I was a wilderness guide. I'd worked all over the world, U.S., Central, South America, eventually Southeast Asia. And I was an experiential educator. So anything that I do, I love there to be a really kinesthetic experience. It's not a sit back and listen, sit back and learn kind of style. It's a get up and do and try stuff and play. So that's kind of where that comes from.
I remember the turtleneck. Was that
the turtle?
Right?
Yeah,
yeah,
It's classic, and it's ridiculous in video, but in a still photo, yeah, man, the turtle is key.
So you not predominantly, explain to me what you're doing now. You're a photographer and videographer and you make content. You also help people with strategy. Tell me about your business now.
Yeah. So look, I am a portrait photographer. That's kind of the craft that I hooked on to, that I kind of, I guess, fell in love with the process of that. I never really cared much about photography itself, though. I've always wanted it to be about something more. I've always wanted the purpose of the photos to be used out in the world. So that's kind of why I didn't get into the whole family wedding kind of stuff. I really just work with professionals on the rise, I tend to say, because it's folks that, they're out there. They're trying to make a significant impact in the world. They're trying to create something interesting and meaningful. And, they need to be able to show up in a way that matches what they're trying to accomplish. So there needs to be a visual representation of that. That's like the outcome, though. That's kind of like the deliverable.
What created that change from guiding people around national parks?
That was weird. So I was working with students and adults of all ages, like 14 and up, basically all over the world. And I was just, I I'd been transient for too long. I wanted to have a neighborhood. I wanted to have a girlfriend. I wanted to have like normal person stuff. I was a professional transient. It was cool, but I needed something different. So I moved to Australia and just decided to be a photographer. It's something I always wanted to do. I'd never had a camera. I didn't know how to take pictures. I had no plan or idea of how to accomplish this. I just went and bought a camera and got started.
Right.
And didn't really look back. It makes zero sense. On paper, you look at it and you're like, what?
Well, where did
what
the
is
first dollar come from?
Where did what?
The first dollar come from? How did you start getting paid?
I did a little bit of everything, absolutely everything. I was doing some family portraits. I was doing some products. I was doing commercial stuff. I started out assisting other commercial photographers. That was kind of like the industry stuff that I got started doing. So I was getting paid to do that while I was trying to find my way in the photography. Eventually, it just came down to, I didn't really love some things. I really loved other things. My time as an outdoor guide and facilitator and um, uh, what do you call it? Team building and communications expert is really what I was hired for. I was the soft skills guy out there. I was never the hard skills guy. It just all kind of fell together, and I just ended up going down I guess you could call it personal branding.
Yeah.
I really don't love that phrase.
Yeah. Why?
Simply, well, it's just, again, it's an outcome thing. It's a byproduct thing. Sitting down to do personal branding doesn't make any sense because that's just it does, but that's just the communication side of it. That's the output part of it. The real personal branding comes from a really challenging look within.
Yeah.
My philosophy around this whole portraiture thing is, that self-expression is a responsibility. That's a quote that I read from this. I forget the guy's name now. Something about self-expression is a responsibility.
Yeah.
And so the only way to do that responsibly, to express oneself responsibly, is the self-awareness aspect of it. So when you sit down to do personal branding, it needs to come from something far more personal and aligned and refined and significant. And most of the time people are just think of it in terms of slapping a logo on it or getting on Facebook more often or just all the strategy bits.
Yeah.
And the strategy bits don't make a whole lot of sense until you have the pieces.
Yeah.
You need the box full of parts to sit down and start to build the Lego thing that's on the box.
Yeah. So how do you differentiate yourself in a crowded market?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the differentiation happens because you are able to go out to your audience and communicate your unique vision, your unique value. And when you can kind of take your skill set and refine it and refine it and refine it down to what you really, really do, well, then you're starting to be able to communicate things differently.
Yeah. So you recently wrote on a process to do that, and you spoke about skill set, mindset, and heart set. Do you want to walk me through that?
Well, so everything that I do with portraiture specifically, and this is where it kind of comes from, I'm always trying to make images that feel more 3D. I want my images to feel like you're sitting right there with that person in that moment. So aesthetically, that's something I'm always striving for. Logistically, I work with body language. I work with nonverbal communication, and that is very much a 3D practice. So the difference between sitting like this on camera versus sitting like this on camera is a completely different experience for a viewer. So I very much work in 3D. Now, it kind of occurred to me that there's really only 3 dimensions that we can communicate. And that's your skill set, which is what you do. It's also what you really do and what you really, really do. So there's levels to that.
Yeah.
Your heart set, well, the mindset is kind of the way you see the world, the way you think about things, what you think, how you would like to think. There's levels to that too, you know. And then the heart set is more of like the foundational stuff, the values, the stuff that doesn't really change a whole lot over time, but it refines and does shift. I just had to go through my own massive personal branding kind of redefine, realign exercise. And I found some things I didn't realize were there.
So why did you start that? Because you've ended up where you are with Superpower You at the moment. But where did that come from over the last few years? And I guess on top of that, after I met you because you had always been looking, you know, the reason for the connection at that time is you were part of a business group. And so I could sense you're always on that journey yourself, trying to work out, you know, what am I? What do I put out into the world? All of that. How has that kind of changed over the last few years to end up where you are now?
Well, you know, originally the main tipping point kind of happened when I signed up for a program. This awesome company, Deeren and Associates. You may know Cynthia Deeren, actually.
Heard the name.
Anyway. Great program. She helps people get set up overseas, businesses, companies,
right.
More in the kind of not so much in the artist space as far as what I'm doing. But I jumped in on a program with her. And so I was getting myself ready to go to Dubai and had meetings set up, and it was kind of 6 months out. And I realized that this brand that I had built over the years that I was quite pleased with, it wasn't me. It wasn't mine. It was a product of a different thinking and a different time and a different place in my own evolution as a business person.
Yeah.
So what happened was I kind of went into panic mode because I was like, I am not taking Portrait Store, which sounds like a commodity.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of intended to be a commodity.
Yeah. Well, you had your own process and you had your own thing and you had your own look. So
I thought I was going to like scale that and kind of make it a business that was like not me. And then I would have the Jason Malouin photography side of things. And then the Portrait Store side of things might be the scalable thing that I could run and put around Australia, whatever. So it had never really been about me. It had always grown from this idea that it was going to be the other brand.
Yes.
So I really went into panic mode because I didn't want to take this brand that I had been building to be not me around the world with me.
Yeah.
So in a desperate move of hopefully creative genius, I completely rebranded the business to Superpower Portraits. Uh, I didn't know what that would be at the time. I hadn't thought it all through. I hadn't figured out what I would be communicating, how I would be bringing more of myself to this brand. So the trip comes and I go over there and I've got a bunch of meetings and I'm trying to communicate superpower portraits to people and it's just not landing. It's kind of not working. I had some good meetings, I made some good connections, and I ended up actually going over to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and doing a shoot for this guy. It was awesome. But overall, it didn't really connect and it didn't really land. So I came back and I was like, all right, now what? I've got this new, shiny new brand. I did the whole thing, the logo and the website and the colors and the fonts and all the things, which I love. I love all that stuff. I totally love it. But it had no substance. It had no soul.
Yeah.
It was a shiny box with not much inside, other than my work, which is unbelievably exceptional. Like, I'm just gonna say it. I'm really good at what I do. So it was there was that, but there was nothing behind it.
Yeah. And you're ready for that by this stage.
Well, yeah, I mean, because up until that point, I still thought I was a photographer. I knew I didn't want to be a photographer. I knew I wanted it to be about something more. I do photography.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be a photographer.
Yeah.
The photography is a product. The photography is a transaction where I wanted it to be more of a transformation.
Yeah.
The portrait session is often transformational, but I always knew I wanted it to be something juicier, something I could really get into a bit more. So that's when I kind of realized I had to figure out what this was going to be.
Yeah.
And that's when I started this process of really intense self-reflection in order to be able to communicate what the hell I'm actually doing here. I mean, what am I actually trying to do for people? What do I actually want to show up as? And I love being on stage. I love being on podcasts. I love being up in front of people. I love writing content. And a big part of it came from I didn't feel I had a really valuable message to share. I could talk about photography. I could talk a little bit about personal branding, but the message itself it wasn't something I wanted to get up and shout from the rooftops about.
Yeah. Most of your clients are professionals, lawyers.
Most of my clients are lawyers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess when you're going in, how do you bring the client along on that journey? Because, yeah, that's the difficult bit. Getting them to commit, getting them to buy in to that process so that you actually come out the other end with that really authentic message, that really personalized message.
Yeah. Look, it's funny because for me, I gravitate to the heart set mindset stuff. That's just me. But that's not the process I worked out, because having kind of put myself through this and then reverse engineered it, I actually found that starting and ending with the skill set, it's a lot more concrete. You can take that a few steps down the road, the skill set. And by the time you get a few steps down the road with that very concrete, what do I really, really do? For myself, I love talking to strangers. I love getting up on stage. I love like it's there's skills that I have that aren't part of photography.
Yeah.
So being able to find some of those skills in the skill set is very powerful.
Yeah.
And it's concrete enough for the people that I work with to enjoy and get something out of.
But a lot of the skill set stuff is linked to story, right? And what you've actually done, because that's real. And that comes through with what you can do and how you deliver that thing you do. I've got some great clients, and early on we established that their strategic approach to things was really different because of who they are and their actual backgrounds. So once that's their story, it's actually part of their superpower and uniquely to them because no one else has that. And communicating that became a central element. Now everyone says strategy, but strategy with X, with Y, with this experience, with that experience.
That's what I find is missing in so many of these programs that I see people going through, right? They go to do this branding stuff and the person goes, all right, step number 1, define your values. Yeah. Step number 2, it's like, wait a minute. We got to go back to this part. Like, just define your values and see, that's heart set stuff. That's the really deep stuff. Yeah. Like, how do you just go straight to there?
Well, you can't. It takes trust as well, right? So it can be a process and can take some time. That's why the magic is in, I think, communicating that process and having everyone understand that that's the road. Even if we take a few steps along it at the beginning, we might not get all the way there.
Yeah, it's
for a while. We'll get there.
I find it's a harder place to start. If you ask somebody, what do they believe in?
Yeah.
What do they, what are your deepest values? You're going to get a list of things. But see, they're very broad ideas. So people are going to say things like integrity. But your version of integrity and my version of integrity, they're going to be different.
Yeah.
So if I take integrity, for example, see, this is part of that, like going that one step further and then going that one step deeper still. Like take integrity and then you go, well, what is integrity? It's like doing what I say. Okay. So my brain is like, as a photographer, as a portrait photographer, you're sitting in front of me. We're working together. I'm about to make portraits. Do integrity. What the shit is that? Yeah. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Integrity doesn't look like something. Integrity is a massive composite of a whole lot of smaller ideas. So you go, all right, well, what is that? And you can break it down into various components and like say, doing what I say is a good example of one of the smaller components. Okay, how do I take a picture of that?
Yeah.
No, I don't. There's no way to express that. There's no way to do that with body language, right? Like, so finding the version of integrity that is coming from a place of self-responsibility and self-belief. Now we're starting to get to something more tangible, more portrayable.
Yeah. Why does all of this matter?
Well, all of this came about because I wanted to figure out a process that I could get people to prepare for a portrait session. I wanted people to be more clear and aligned within themselves so I could be clearer and more aligned with my clients. So when we go to put really the best you that we can both come up with, like on camera, we have something to work with.
Yeah.
I didn't like that the portrait session was the starting place. That's not the ending place, but that's one of those jumping off points when you already have these things. So it started out as a prep course for the portrait session. And then it just kind of got a little more and more involved. And now I'm not even sure if it's going to be a standalone thing. That's kind of evolving right now as I'm actually taking my beta crew, my beta people through Superpower U.
Yeah.
So it's working. It's interesting.
I guess creatively and practically, what is a good portrait?
Whoa, dude, that's a good question. That's a really good question. A portrait, first of all, is only half created in the moment that we create it. Understanding that this thing we're creating is going out into the world and being perceived by people who will interpret this through their own filters, their own preferences, their own biases. So rather than trying to be prescriptive about an image and really say something specific, going into it with the intention to frame an experience by which someone can relate, someone can recognize something within themselves in what you're portraying, that to me is a really good portrait. When I break it down for people, a good portrait has to be three things. It has to be incredibly flattering, right? Like, you gotta look good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but that's important.
Yeah.
It has to be meaningful. If you look good, but there's no substance to it, there's no intention, it's empty. It's an empty shell. It's just a ego piece. So if it looks good and it has some meaning and substance and intention, it needs to be usable. For my audience, we're out using these images in the world. And so if it looks good and has some substance, but it's not flexible and usable enough, what was the point of any of it?
Yeah.
So those are the three kind of things that I'm always looking for, structurally speaking.
I mean, how do you deal with clients who don't like how they look?
Nobody likes how they look. Nobody wants to be photographed.
Thank goodness I'm not.
No. Yeah. That's why when you say, like, how do you make a good portrait? It's like, understanding the human condition is how I make a good portrait. Knowing that I'm not, you're showing up and you are completely out of your comfort zone. You are, like, the client is literally on the verge, if not fully in fight or flight mode. I mean, it is genuine fear place. You have no certainty around how this is ever going to work. You have no control of the process. We have never learned body language, how to hold ourselves and how to express ourselves properly. Our faces do things without us even realizing. It's a huge challenge. Taking somebody from that place of, I'd say, abject terror. Sometimes it's less, but, like, to be completely honest, being able to hold that space and be comfortable in that, showing people that there is a process. All you have to do is just play along, showing a quick win. So somebody goes, oh, okay, maybe this can work. That's all we need. And then from there, it's interesting. It's a lot less artistic than I thought portrait photography would be. It is a lot more structural and engineering.
Are they okay with poor photography? Because I see a
There's-
lot of like poor imagery everywhere. And I think, you turn up in a $2,000 suit, but photo on your website or everything that's going out is 8 years old or is X. Well, where does the value element get lost in the equation?
There's a few things there. So first of all, the $2,000 suit is the like looking good, but is there substance? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, so showing up in your best, it's not always enough. But there's probably two answers to that question, really. One thing is like people are not educated in a way. Like the photography industry is a bit of a nightmare. Like if you go looking for a quote, you can literally find $100 some, $10,000, everything in between, and like most people aren't aesthetically attuned. It's just, that's not your job, is other stuff.
Yes.
So there's the problem with the industry itself. And then there is the issue that people don't necessarily see a big difference. Well, the people that I work with clearly do.
Yes.
But then there's also the piece where pretty much I think most people that I work with go, well, yeah, like, all your example photos are great, but am I going to turn up? Am I going to be that? Am I going to look like that?
Yeah.
There's this inner like voice going, yeah, but I'm not young enough, thin enough, well-dressed, and all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, I've had all of those thoughts many, many times, and that's what holds you back from sometimes getting it. But fun enough, running a branding agency over the years, the one thing that has solidified with me, because I really didn't understand the impact of imagery, is just how valuable good imagery is. I mean, if you are on social media, what do people engage with? Imagery of you, not your thing. Like on your website, what makes the impression? Well, like that face, that connection, because that's a human being to the story. I can't believe there are lots of websites out there and they use stock imagery of other people on their own website, which it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've been on that journey, I guess, as well, and just seeing the value of great image, but of things and people, like how impactful that is to the message.
Well, and so a big part of the driving force of Superpower You is that, I'm getting to this place where I can only get so much message into it. I can only build so much meaning and intention into it without getting a lot more out of the person.
Yeah.
So, really being able to take that time and identify like what we're really doing to be able to start to articulate that both visually and in words.
So you spoke about pricing and this huge disparity. How have you tackled pricing and value, and what price you put on things?
So I learned aesthetics from a commercial sensibility. And I was always able to create images that really stood out visually. You'd look at mine and somebody else's and be like, holy crap, this is so much better. But that only got me to a certain point. And through that time, I would increase my prices. A lot of that was just based on what I believed it was worth and what some of what other people were charging. I always wanted to be a little more expensive.
But it's hard with pricing because you can go through that, but you still have to pay the bills. And like, so at the end of the day, and there are a lot of starving artists.
You're going to pay $30 for information, and you're going to pay $30,000 for transformation.
Yeah.
And that right there is the single most valuable sentence I ever heard when it comes to pricing. And if you're communicating in a way that you are delivering information, and a photograph is information, that is just pixels, it's information. Any commodity or outcome driven message is still just selling information.
Yeah.
If one can craft an experience and communicate a transformational process, people are willing to pay a lot more for that and enjoy it more.
The enjoy it more piece is a really good one. I had a client, and I never thought about it until he said to me, I was worried about his time. And so I was rushing through something. I was really, really anxious about his time. And he said, no. This is the bit I enjoy. Like, I have a business so we can have these 2 hours to do this thing. Like, yes, I'm busy, but this is why I'm not working somewhere else. It was a really good reminder to me about, that I thought the value lay in the answer. But for him, the answer was valuable, but so was the relationship. So was the process. So was just today I didn't have to do
push the widget
10 hours of pleadings.
Yeah.
I also sat with Mike and we did some strategies, bigger picture stuff that I won't get the chance to do for another 3 months. And that was a lot of fun. And instead of me being focused on that outcome, understanding that process was enough. Yeah.
See, that's interesting because it's a real mindset piece. That's like that second dimension part. Like, his mindset in that place was that he got to take a step back and work on his business and enjoy crafting something new. Like, and until we can start to notice how we think, what we think, we don't realize what we're creating for ourselves, for the people around us. You can change. I actually say it's not about really making changes. It's more about making choices. You're not trying to change who you are. You're just trying to be really specific about what you're choosing to do, what you choose to think, how you choose to feel, and how you decide to communicate all that. You don't have to change who you are, but maybe in the exploration, you make different choices. Those different choices will result in changes from time to time. But the goal isn't the change.
Yeah.
The goal is to recognize the choices that we're making and then refine that.
So who inspires you? Where do you get inspiration from?
I'm reading The Complete History of the Ancient World, which is everything from the very first written anything, the very first recorded anything up until the fall of the Roman Empire. I'm about halfway through that. I'm reading a book on this. It's called the Self-Permission Method because I recognize I have many of my own blocks. I am reading a book on Buddhism right now, not another book on Buddhism right now, on meditating on emptiness. It's my inspiration comes from hip hop lyrics. It comes from running my guts out a few times a week.
A mate of mine at jiu-jitsu, we were talking about how our jiu-jitsu, how he approaches his jiu-jitsu. And I was saying to him, you know, what's your philosophy? Because we have kind of a, I don't know, philosophy is probably a heavy word, but the way I was thinking about it was like your mental approach and how you are represented. And he was just he told me like, it is a reflection of me.
Mm.
And a lot of what you say and means that, you know, you want your work to be a reflection of you, and the best reflection it can be. That doesn't mean that thing has to motivate you per se. Like, I don't watch jiu-jitsu, I just like doing it.
Yeah. Well,
like, yeah.
another great example of skill set being so much greater than what we're currently articulating, right? So for one of the things in my skill set is being able to anticipate. I can anticipate what's about to happen so that in my portraits, I'm able to like make something else come through.
Yeah.
But if I were to get into jiu-jitsu, anticipation is an insane skill that I would bring to that doing. I'm a huge UFC fan.
Right. Yeah.
I watch a lot of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And I can see that being able to anticipate those moments means that you're going to be the one that's on top. I think jiu-jitsu is a beautiful
You do it through
analogy.
experience. It's like a lot of things, like it comes through experience. And we talk about, you know, it's like chess or seeing a couple of moves in advance. And you feel when someone is more in advance to you, they're playing a different game, you know?
Oh, it's like
and
magic.
That's where you want to be.
It's like,
yeah.
It's akin to magic.
Oh, it feels like it.
Yeah.
And it's, look, you know, 11 years of doing jiu-jitsu, I'll roll with a really good black belt and I'll walk up and thinking, I haven't done this for a day.
I'll never forget. I was in high school and it was a graduation. And one of my best friends growing up was really quite a high level wrestler. And it was at his house and we were having a pool party, graduation in high school. And I was like, ha ha ha, I'm going to throw him in his own pool. Oh my God. And he's a little dude, right? He's like half my size. I grabbed him, and before I knew what happened, I was immobilized. And that was it. And I don't know what happened or what he did, but I was stuck and I was done. And that was the end of my plan. And
how have you kept going? Like through these changes, you're a solopreneur. It's a tough gig at times, man. You're carrying a lot of stuff. You gotta carry your own bags. You gotta pay your own bills. What keeps you going with that?
It's the transformation that I've experienced and helped my clients experience in a portrait session. It really is the most exciting part of it. People go from the, oh my God, I'm going to die, through to, holy shit, look at me. Look at that. I knew that was in there, but I didn't know, I've never seen that. That's an amazing place to help somebody get to.
Yeah.
That transformation is by far the most rewarding part of everything I do. It's my art. I need that.
Yeah.
I need that. That is as fulfilling and rewarding as anything else, and it's worth all the crap. It's worth dealing with all the bits and pieces that aren't very exciting or sexy. But
what's been, I guess, your biggest failure in business, if you believe in that word? What's been the hardest thing you've had to get through?
It's funny because one of the, like, I distinctly remember there's been a couple steps along the way. Like when I first got started, I thought I was going to be a photographer in business. Recognizing that I need to be a business person that does photography was probably the first hurdle that I had to overcome, because that was a significant shift. I wanted to be an artist. It was this thing. Figuring that out was probably the first. Niching and embracing that quicker was probably the next biggest mistake, because I really resisted that. There was a lot of fear around that. I didn't really understand what niching actually is or what it can be. I got a lot of advice, but that was terrifying. But that's been one of the single biggest shifts that I've ever made. Because from there, I think everything else has been kind of more possible. I couldn't communicate my unique value right now if I hadn't really gone down one specific track.
Yeah.
Like Portraits for Professionals on the Rise.
Yeah. And so how have you managed your own mental health and wellness through the journey, man? And you've lost heaps of weight in the last couple of years. Like, how have you,
it and lost it again?
how have you like got yourself fit and well? Running, like,
yeah, I'm obsessed with running. I kind of always have been. There was an injury, a disc injury along the way about 8 years ago that kind of messed me up and took a while to come back from. Meditation is just a part of my life. Running is a part of my life. Yeah, I've always approached losing weight again as a side effect. My personal mindset, heart set around health. Okay, because health is like integrity. It's this word, this giant word that means nothing because it's a composite of many things. What I really strive for is a level of wellness. What my version of wellness, again, another word that doesn't mean a lot, but it's that drilling down, right? What wellness is to me is a flexibility, is a spontaneity. It's a freedom of movement. It's a joyfulness of movement. It is a joyful expression of physicalized. And so when I say I love running, it's running, this big word running, as you're making your way through the neighborhood changes dramatically. What you are really doing, it's a completely different thing from day to day, from block to block, from anything, weather, like all of the inputs completely changes what you're really doing. So as I've been rehabbing this injury, I can only I don't really have full feeling in my right leg and foot. It's kind of weird. So running can be hard. But as I'm rebuilding that, if I am moving through space joyfully and spontaneously, however that shows up in that moment, then I am living my version of wellness, and therefore I'm doing health. Do you see what I mean?
I do.
I always break everything down like that.
Yeah. I love that the byproduct.
Losing weight is a byproduct.
Yeah.
Losing weight is a side effect that happens as a result of me expressing healthfulness, wellfulness in the way that I personally mindset and heart set that through the skill set of running.
Yeah.
But it's never about the running
Yeah.
or the health or the losing weight. It's all that stuff underneath.
Yeah.
And by communicating that, you can connect to that more.
Yeah. And all the other things that you do to, as you mentioned, find that energy place where you feel for you that's the energy level that you need in your life.
I'm a big believer in like using burning energy creates more energy. Like that's just like the harder I go, the more I seem to have.
Oh, action beget actions, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I guess, how have you embraced your uniqueness? Because you are like a guy who I look at and I love your smile and always your laugh, mate, and your energy. And I like, and we get a bit too introspective sometimes thinking about ourselves. So maybe you don't think too much about it in a world of kind of sameness. But yeah, how have you embraced it?
Look, I do think about it a lot because I am the one helping other people express themselves.
Especially in a professional environment where sometimes you're expected to turn up in a specific way, which is sometimes how I've self-censored myself over time with lots of things. Yeah.
See, we spend a lot of time making and working with our to-do list, and we don't spend a lot of time focusing on our to-be list. And when we can take a bit more time and focus and craft that to-be list, it changes the doing. It changes the way we approach our to-do list. We can do the exact same things, but we come at it with a more aligned and a more personal approach. We do the doing differently.
Yeah.
So look, in all fairness, I do have some things working in my favor. I am not from here. I am not expected to show up in a way that an Australian might be expected to show up. Tall poppy syndrome is not a factor for me. I don't have those cultural layers that people have here that get in my way. I have other cultural mess to overcome. But look, when I go home, I don't stand out. I am just I am very similar to everybody around me. Everybody around me I get to stand out here by the fact that I am not from here.
So, mate, last question. What's some advice you'd give your younger self?
I've reinvented myself a few times over the years, like completely. Like I was in theater, live theater, and then I was a wilderness guide, and then I was a photographer in Australia. Like it's kind of a crazy progression. I love that I have always just changed when it was time to change, jumped in without hesitation, and just gone for what I wanted to go for. What I'm noticing now that I am 46, and a lot of my friends are, 10 years older or my age or a little bit older, there's a hardening, there's a rigidifying element. I don't know if it's a generational thing, the generation ahead of me. I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if it's a male thing. It seems that women, as they get older, get more flexible in mind and spirit. There's a fear that starts to set in. There's the consequences seem greater. It becomes harder to make the big changes. Even smaller changes seem scarier somehow. And that, I think, would be an easy thing to miss, to not notice.
Yeah.
I feel pretty lucky that I have noticed now, using that worry, that fear, the using that to your advantage, and doing everything it takes to kind of counterbalance that. Because there's no pushing things away. Anything you resist just comes back at you more. So transmuting it, transforming it into something useful, meaningful, helpful. Yeah. And give more. I don't know if there's any opportunity to give more. That's always been some of my greatest joys in life, is giving. And if there's any opportunity to give more, it's more fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's more joyful. It's
thankfulness and giving is what brings joy in the end, right? So, Jason, thank you very much for your time on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man.
Thanks, man.
I love it.